Hello everyone, welcome to my presentation on Is Google Assistant's Interactive Canvas for You? My name is Celia and I'm a software engineer focused on finding and building meaningful solutions for products that make life simple. In my free time, I like to write blogs on technologies like Interactive Canvas and other front-end libraries. So today we'll be discussing three things. Firstly, what is Interactive Canvas? Secondly, my experience with it, so the good, the bad, and any tips I have. And finally, whether Interactive Canvas is for you. So let's begin. What is Google Assistant? It is an AI-powered virtual assistant developed by Google that is primarily available on smart home and mobile devices. You can ask it questions, you can tell it to do things. It's basically your own personal Google. And as a developer, you might be asking yourself, right, how do I build on Google Assistant? And it's actually pretty simple. So there are two ways that you can do it, and both uses something called conversational actions. That is the base to building more complex conversational interfaces. You can use it with the first method being basic prompts. So that's like your cards, your list, your media responses. Alternatively, you can use it with interactive canvas. Now, you might just be curious, right? What is Interactive Canvas? So Interactive Canvas is a framework built on Google Assistant and allows developers to create full-screen visuals, custom animations, and transitions. Basically, anything that you can build on a web app, you can roughly build it on Interactive Canvas. So how does it work? It works in two stages. The first one uses conversational action, and that basically handles all of the conversational logic, right? So for example, the user says, turn the screen blue. Conversational action will use NLU to process it, and then it sends an action or a command to your web app by using the Interactive Canvas API. So your web app can be built using front-end web technologies like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and it should be able to take in the command, and in this case, it should turn the screen blue. So currently, it's being used in games like virtual pet games. The one that you see on the screen right now is called My Smart Pet. It's used in educational games and a lot of freeware games. You can tell that a large portion of Google Home apps are games and that they are very voice forward. So given all the games that were designed, right, my experience with Interactive Canvas was more exploratory. I wanted to see how else I can use this. And with that, I actually created two projects and oversaw the production of another one. But here's the example of my New York Times bestsellers app. It basically shows you a list of bestsellers and you can choose which book that you want to look at along with the description. And the bot would actually read out a short description, whereas you can get the bot to read out the longer description that you see on the screen. So the reasons why I chose to use Interactive Canvas, firstly, is the ability to create more visually appealing projects, more than just basic prompts, right? This way you're able to create unique pages that can bring out the brand design and identity much more easily. Secondly, I'm able to use a framework that I'm familiar with. So in this case, it's React.js, and I can basically treat this as building a website, but for a much smaller screen. And finally, I just wanted to explore what was possible. I wanted to see if this product could fit any of the business problems that other products of mine were facing, so it's very exploratory. But with all that said, there were some problems that I faced while I was building my interactive canvases. The first challenge happened when we were trying to play a YouTube video in our interactive canvas. It worked for a few times, but then subsequently failed, and it was really difficult to debug the main problem. And given that it is quite a fresh technology with improvements coming along the way, there aren't a lot of forums nor a lot of people that will face the same issues as you do. So pushing for an issue to be solved can take some time. Secondly, latency. And this is a huge thing that many people had a bad experience with, but thankfully it's something that Google Assistant is fixing because they've recently announced in 2021's Google I/O that there will be some improvements. So we just have to cross our fingers and wait and see. Thirdly, there are some restrictions pertaining the type of device that you can run Interactive Canvas on and the categories that are being approved for Interactive Canvas, which I'll talk a bit more about later on. Next, versioning was something that my team faced, but I'm not entirely sure if other teams might have faced it. So for example, if a developer deploys version 1 to alpha staging and then sends out a testing link. And then maybe a few hours later, the same developer deploys version 2 to alpha. A tester might still end up with version 1 and not version 2, and so they might have to spend some time to reconfigure their testing environment. And finally, there are times when the test view on Actions console doesn't accurately reflect the issues faced on Google Home. And these discrepancies were something that would work on the test view but not on someone else's Google Homes, and it gets very difficult to debug because we don't have like the physical device itself. So it was just very troublesome. But with all of that said, if I were to start another interactive canvas from scratch, here's some tips I would recommend trying. Firstly, use the Actions console rather than the Actions SDK, especially if you're a more visual learner, because I do feel that it is more than sufficient to build up the base of your bot and all of the conversational flows that you need. And afterwards, you can switch to code to build up your web app or even like add more functionalities that the SDK can provide. Next, if you really want to use onClick, you can use send text query. So send text query is pretty intuitive from its name. You basically send a text query to the conversational action, and with that, it would trigger the next scene. Finally, add a debugging overlay to display all of your console logs and console errors. Like in this image, you will see that it's at the bottom right of the corner. I'll be leaving some resources towards the end of the slides so that you can follow along and add your own debugging overlay at your own time. But this is very, very helpful when you're trying to debug any issues. So as we move into our final part, these will be some guiding questions, right? Help you understand whether or not interactive canvas might be a good fit. So firstly, think about why do you want to use this? Is conversational action with basic prompts insufficient for what you want to do? Or maybe you need something more visually appealing? So of course, if you answered yes to both questions, then maybe interactive canvas might be for you. Secondly, do you need it to work on certain platforms? So interactive canvas is currently only available on Android devices and Google Homes for now. So if you need it on like iOS devices or Android TV, for example, interactive canvas might not be for you. Next, are you making applications that fall within certain categories? As of now, only these 3 categories are being approved for interactive canvas applications, but that's not to say that they won't ever approve other categories. It's just that it will take some time before it actually happens. Next, consider the design and technical constraints. And honestly, these are just a few key constraints, and I'll be leaving links in the end of the presentation that shows you the full list of design and technical constraints. But yeah, make sure to take a look at these restrictions because they may just make or break your project. And finally, consider the updates from Google I/O 2021. So for example, there's news of a faster, simpler, and low latency Canvas API coming out, where they intend to provide support for client-side TTS, NLU, and storage. As of now, there's no hard date as to when it'll be released for developers, but there's so much more that Google I/O 2021 has to offer. There's more updates pertaining Google Assistant and Interactive Canvas as time goes on, so definitely keep your eyes out for new updates if you intend to use Interactive Canvas. At the end of the day, given all of these guiding questions and depending on the purpose of your application, you might need to let go of some parts of the project. Maybe you might have to wait for an update, or maybe you just have to completely drop the usage of Interactive Canvas. But regardless of which decision you end up with, using Interactive Canvas or not, I personally believe that there are still benefits to exploring Interactive Canvas because it definitely challenges you as a developer to think differently on how to create a voice-first interactive application. So with that, we've come to the end of the presentation. Here's some resources for you to reference as promised. And yeah, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. Thank you.